Most people still associate intelligence with how much you know, how many facts you can recall, how well you perform on a test, how sharp you sound in a conversation. But that's not what defines true cognitive power. Intelligence, at its core, is not about the volume of information you've stored. It's about how efficiently your brain processes that information, especially under stress or complexity. Here's what the science shows. Your brain operates as a network of circuits. The speed, flexibility, and coordination of those circuits determine how fast you can shift attention, integrate new data, filter noise, and arrive at actionable insight. This is what we call neural efficiency. It's the biological foundation of intelligence. A person with high neural efficiency can take in less data and arrive at a more accurate conclusion than someone with 10 times more information, but slower, less optimized circuitry. It's like comparing a race car to a minivan. They might both get to the same destination, but one gets there faster, more precisely, and with far better control. So when we talk about becoming smarter, what we're really talking about is increasing the brain's signal-to-noise ratio, reducing friction between cognitive systems, and enhancing the brain's ability to stay online and accurate under demand. That's trainable, and it doesn't happen from passive consumption. It happens from protocols that challenge and adapt the system itself. Cold exposure followed by deep rest is one of the few accessible tools that does exactly this. It activates and sharpens key neuromodulator systems, forces the brain to engage under intensity, then gives it the environment to repair and rewire more efficiently. You don't just feel more alert, you become fundamentally more capable. That's intelligence. Not the memorized answer, but the enhanced capacity to generate the right answer when it counts. When you expose your body to cold, specifically uncomfortably cold temperatures that are still safe, you trigger an immediate and powerful neurochemical cascade. This isn't about toughness or discomfort for its own sake. This is about leveraging your biology to sharpen the brain. The moment cold receptors on your skin register that drop in temperature, your body responds by releasing norepinephrine, a powerful neuromodulator involved in alertness, attention, and vigilance. At the same time, dopamine levels begin to rise. Dopamine isn't just the molecule of pleasure, it's the molecule of motivation, drive, and focus. Together, these chemicals act like a biochemical highlighter across your entire nervous system. What's key here is that these are not subtle effects. The spike in norepinephrine can be up to 2.5 times baseline, and dopamine can rise by 250%. This creates a state of heightened mental acuity. You're more alert, more focused, and more capable of encoding new information. In other words, cold exposure primes the brain for learning. This is why deliberate cold exposure isn't just a resilience tool, it's a cognitive upgrade. By repeatedly activating these neuromodulatory systems through short, intense sessions, just a few minutes per exposure, you train the brain to access high-performance states more reliably. Over time, the brain becomes better at self-regulating under pressure, focusing deeply and switching between mental states with precision. Cold isn't just a stressor, it's a signal that tells your brain to wake up, lock in, and prepare to perform. And when used strategically, it becomes a powerful lever for increasing learning speed and depth, not just in the cold, but throughout the day. After deliberately engaging the nervous system through stress, like cold exposure, you need a counterbalance. That's where targeted deep rest comes in. It's not optional, it's essential. And here's why. Non-sleep deep rest, or NSDR, refers to protocols that guide the brain into a state of calm alertness. deep relaxation without actually falling asleep. This includes practices like yoga nidra or specific forms of guided hypnosis. During NSDR, the brain enters a unique rhythm, slow, synchronous waves that allow it to recalibrate. You're awake, but the nervous system is in a repair mode. What happens in this state is remarkable. First, the brain begins to consolidate memory. Neural patterns that were activated earlier, especially during intense states like cold exposure or focused work, are replayed and strengthened. This is called offline replay, and it's a key part of how we encode long-term memory. Second, NSDR enhances executive function. That's your ability to make decisions, regulate impulses, plan, and maintain focus. The prefrontal cortex, your command center, becomes more efficient when it's given space to recover and integrate. Most people push through fatigue with caffeine or distraction, but the science is clear. A short session of NSDR can restore dopamine levels, reset attention, and bring the brain back online far more effectively than a nap or a break. This is the secret weapon most people miss. You don't get sharper by grinding harder. You get sharper by recovering strategically. NSDR is like installing a software update for your brain while keeping the hardware online. The result, better memory, clearer thinking, faster decisions. And when paired with the right kind of physiological activation beforehand, the effect isn't just restorative, it's transformational. The nervous system was built for contrast. It was never designed to live in constant calm or constant stress. It thrives on oscillation, on moving between activation and recovery. That's how you build what's known as cognitive resilience, the ability to stay mentally clear, emotionally stable, and physically capable even under pressure. When you deliberately introduce controlled stress, like cold exposure, breath holds, or high-intensity effort, you activate the sympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system. This is the system responsible for alertness, readiness, and mobilization. It sharpens your focus, elevates heart rate, and prepares you for action. But if you stay there too long, you burn out. The key is not just activation, it's the switch. When you follow that deliberate stress with targeted deep rest, such as NSDR, you activate the parasympathetic system. This calms the body, repairs tissue, replenishes neurotransmitters, and restores cognitive clarity. And here's the important part. The shift between those states is what strengthens the system. Just like muscles grow by alternating tension and release, your cognitive capacity grows when the brain learns how to move cleanly between stress and recovery. That's what builds resilience, not just the ability to handle stress, but the ability to recover quickly and return to peak function. This oscillation creates a more flexible, more adaptive nervous system. You're not just tougher, you're faster to reset, more precise under strain, and more resistant to burnout. This is what separates high performers from the rest. They don't avoid stress. They train it. They stress with intention. They rest with purpose. And over time, their baseline shifts. They become the calmest in the storm and the sharpest under fire. One of the most overlooked benefits of this protocol, alternating deliberate stress with targeted deep rest, is how it reshapes your relationship with chaos. And this isn't just about feeling calmer. It's about expanding your threshold for unpredictability while still thinking clearly, strategically, and fast. Here's what's happening on a neurological level. When you voluntarily expose yourself to short, controlled doses of stress, like cold immersion, you train the brain and body to stay regulated in discomfort. You're forcing the prefrontal cortex, the center of decision-making and planning, to stay online while the limbic system, the emotional reactive part, is firing hard. That's exactly the state most people fall apart in. But when you train this regularly, something powerful happens. Your threshold for chaos increases. Situations that would normally trigger panic or shut down now register as manageable. You don't just survive stress, you operate inside it. You make decisions faster with less emotional interference. You assess risk more clearly. You become surgical in your thinking. Pair that with NSDR, and now you're not just training endurance, you're optimizing the reset. That's critical. Strategic thinking isn't about long stretches of deep thought. It's about rapidly toggling between intensity and recovery so your cognition stays sharp and your nervous system stays stable. What you're building is adaptability under pressure. The world is full of chaos. It's unavoidable. But when you've trained your nervous system to hold precision in discomfort, to recover quickly, and to keep thinking in complexity, you become dangerous in the best way. Not reactive, not overwhelmed, just clear, calm, and 2 moves ahead. In the modern world, dangerous doesn't look like it used to. It's not about brute strength. It's not about intimidation or volume. It's about control, specifically emotional control, and the ability to execute under pressure with precision. That's what defines true capability now. The people who are most effective, most formidable, are the ones who can stay centered when everything around them is spinning out. When stress hits, whether it's physical, emotional, or psychological, most people get hijacked. Their heart rate spikes, their breathing shortens, their decision-making collapses into reactivity. That's not weakness. That's biology, but it's also trainable by engaging in controlled stress. Like deliberate cold exposure, you're voluntarily stepping into that chaos. You're telling your nervous system, I'm in charge. You maintain your breathing, you keep your eyes steady, you resist the urge to flinch. That simple act begins to build emotional control at the level of your physiology. And when you pair that with deep rest protocols, your system learns not only how to stay composed under pressure, but how to recover faster and come back stronger. Over time, your baseline changes. You become less emotionally volatile, more internally anchored. That calm becomes a weapon. In high-stakes situations, when others are frozen or flailing, you move, you lead. You execute. That's modern dangerousness. Not the loudest person in the room, but the one who can regulate their internal state so effectively that they become immune to external chaos. Quiet, clear, lethal when necessary. It's not about control over others. It's about mastery of self, especially when it counts. There's a specific threshold, 11 minutes a week. That's all it takes. Research shows that just 11 minutes of deliberate cold exposure per week, broken into short, consistent sessions spread over 2 to 4 days, is enough to trigger profound neurochemical shifts. We're talking about real structural and functional changes in the brain that, when paired with daily non-sleep deep rest, begin to rewire your nervous system for elite performance. Here's how it works. The cold initiates a full spectrum activation of the brain and body. You get a surge of norepinephrine, which enhances focus and vigilance. You get a rise in dopamine, which sharpens motivation and learning. These aren't subtle changes. These are dramatic shifts in baseline neurochemistry that raise your cognitive floor and ceiling. And importantly, it's the consistency, not the duration, that matters. You don't need hours, you need commitment. Then you layer in the recovery. NSDR done daily, even for 10 to 20 minutes, this puts the brain in a state of neuroplastic readiness. Memory gets consolidated, stress gets processed, executive function gets recalibrated. You recover faster, think more clearly, and respond more intelligently. What you're doing through this cycle is teaching your brain and nervous system to adapt under challenge and optimize under rest. That's the formula for elite level output. Not just once, but over and over again, with consistency and resilience. This isn't motivation, this is mechanics. With just 11 minutes of cold exposure per week and intentional deep rest every day, you shift your default operating system. You become faster, calmer, smarter, not because you want to, but because you've literally rewired the pathways that control focus, drive, and performance. This is neurobiology on your terms. So here's what it all comes down to. You don't need to wait for intelligence to be handed to you. You don't need to hope for discipline or clarity to magically show up. You can train it. You can hardwire it. And the tools are already within reach. No supplements, no gimmicks, no shortcuts, just precise protocols grounded in biology, 11 minutes a week of cold exposure, paired with daily deep rest. Do that consistently, and you're not just enhancing focus or memory. You're changing how your brain responds to stress, how it makes decisions, how it holds the line when everything's on fire. You become the one in the room who doesn't flinch, who sees the move before it happens, who executes without hesitation. That's what makes you 50% smarter and far more dangerous, not because of what you know, but because of what you've trained yourself to become. Calm in chaos, sharp under pressure, relentless by design.